we can feel unloved, because whenever we want something and our expectations are not fulfilled, we will feel unloved. We will have more resistance to it, and this resistance just increases over years. It really helps you understand what can cause the disturbance. The cure part takes a longer time. It can cure.
Okay.
Do you realize that all the choices that you have made in your life, all and every choice, is only based on how you can be loved? So each of us, we are doing this, but we are doing this without conscious awareness. Like mental health and physical health are two aspects of our
Yeah.
life.
My next guest on today's podcast is Sarmistha Mitra, is a master holistic counselor and a thought leader. Her interesting framework of DecodeYou has solved, cured, and enabled a lot of folks to come out of personal and professional ailments. If you want to know what it means to be a holistic counselor and a healer, then I would recommend you not to miss the show. She has some very interesting perspective towards life, and I would highly recommend you to give this podcast a shot. Hi, Sharmistha. Welcome to Masters Decoded Podcast, Season 3. Really glad to have you on the show today.
It's my pleasure, Anis, and thank you for having me over.
No, and my team and we were doing a little bit of research, and your entire website is very interesting, right? It says your Wellbeing Sanctuary. So, for the benefit of the audience, I have done research about what you do, what you focus on, and before we started talking, you gave a little bit glimpse about what you do. But I want to hear more about why your well-being and what is Sanctuary and how have you created a sanctuary around that. So, do you want to double click a little bit on that?
Sure. Your well being is my expertise, so I can help in your well being. And sanctuary is a place where your soul and your body and your mind rejuvenates together. My whole therapeutic approach, the DecodeYou program which I have created, is there is one aspect which adds it all together, is the soul aspect, where most of the therapeutic approaches that I have learned in the past, they connect the body and the mind, but they leave out the soul. But without the soul, the journey isn't complete. And in the sanctuary, people find their soul back, and which we nurture and bring it together as the persona comes together again.
So, you said the therapeutic part, right? So, is it medical or is it more spiritual? How's that journey from that perspective?
It's combination of the mind,
Okay.
psychology, human behavior, the dysfunction in human behavior, dysfunction in the mind, dysfunction in the body,
Okay.
the crisis period which all we all go through, either in the mind or in the body or in our behavior, how we are not connected to the
Yeah.
soul. And when we bring the soul aspect into the mind and the body, then we can get the answers and we can find a way out.
Interesting. So let's talk a little bit about the dysfunction piece, right? You spoke about the dysfunction of the mind, the body, and the spirituality or the physiology of the entire dysfunction. So when you say dysfunction, is it trauma or is it something else?
Dysfunction is a trauma response. It's not trauma, it's just a response to the old trauma. So, first of all, if I may ask you, Anis, what is your understanding of trauma? What is trauma?
See, uh, I haven't gone back to the dictionary to look at trauma, but the little I know, and I've been to certain recently, and I say recently in the last 6 months, 9 months, I've been through certain coaching programs myself, and one of them was specifically was very. It was a 4 day, very intense, and I came to realize the kind of traumas I had as a child or as a grown up, which were there and kind of made me do things, or those traumas were pushing me to do things which I didn't realize. And these can be bad ones, really bad ones, and can be experiences which kind of made me do what I'm doing, right? Or make my behaviors or uh, connect with people in a way. So for me, trauma is those experiences or those situations which kind of leave a deep impact in my mind, right? And not in the frontal, but in the back of the brain, right? It's that which changes your behavior, changes your perspective. So I don't know if that's what you define as trauma, but for me, that's what I have come to realize the traumas I've had in my life.
Yeah, that's the general concept of trauma. But trauma is actually only one thing, and which is universally true for every individual. And listen, and then you tell me if I'm right,
Hmm.
okay? Trauma is a feeling of being unloved.
Interesting. Okay. Now, when you say not loved or being loved, either of the two, right? Unloved,
Unloved.
right?
Being
Yeah. So
unloved.
when you say unloved, is it usually then those bad situations where you didn't have that, or you have the feeling of unloved?
You didn't feel, yeah. Whenever we felt
Okay.
unloved as a child, we had a sense of
Mm-hmm.
trauma. You know why? Because our brain, the physical part I'm talking
Yeah.
about, the brain is wired with pain
Hmm.
inhibitors, which is necessary to survive on the
Yeah.
planet. So you have to avoid
Yeah.
pain in all
Yes.
circumstances. But the brain is not so evolved to identify between physical pain and emotional
Hmm.
pain. So the emotional pain is the only pain we have gone through and we go through all our lives is feeling unloved.
Hmm.
And that is what our brain is not equipped to process properly. It creates the same effect, which is the fight and flight effect, whereas in the physical case, it is effective because you really have to run away from the physical threat. You really have to fight it to survive. But when it is an emotion only, and you're really not in danger, right? But the brain cannot assess
Right.
it. It makes us go into a defense
Hmm.
mechanism, fight and flight
Yeah.
mechanism, which we now portray in our behavior and go into behavioral dysfunction. And that is how behavioral dysfunctions are created.
So these traumas are usually in human beings only in childhood, Sharmishta, or is it also they can be?
Every day of our life,
Yeah.
every day of our life, we can feel unloved because whenever we want something and our expectations are not fulfilled, we will feel unloved.
Hmm. Now, why is a childhood trauma so or has such a bigger impact than a teenage trauma, or let's say an adulthood trauma? Why do you think that that childhood trauma is so huge? And I've been doing a little bit of my own research, right? How childhood trauma changes everyone, right? Why is that has such a huge impact?
So, in the childhood, especially between the age group of 0 to
Hmm.
5, it's the most fundamental years of a child's psychological
Hmm.
development. In this age group, we are very emotional. We don't have the power of reasoning
Hmm.
yet. The emotion of pain is what we learn to resist because, again, we, the human animals, are the most pleasure loving animals on the
Yeah.
planet. So, any kind of pain, we have an automatic reaction to it, which is resistance to the pain.
Interesting.
So, the childhood 0 to 5, what happens is every experience we are having for the first time. The pleasurable ones are also recorded in the brain, the unpleasurable or unpleasant ones are also recorded in the brain. And now, since we are programmed to avoid the pain and the not so pleasurable experiences, it is remembered and recorded in the brain as a tendency to avoid it. So, next time when we'll have a similar experience where again we will feel unloved, since we have not learned how to process this emotion in a healthy way, we will have more resistance to it, and this resistance just increases over years, and we become very intolerant to certain emotions as we grow up. Our emotional intolerance later on leads to a lot of dysfunctions in the mind and the body.
Hmm. Very, very interesting. But how do you realize? Because as grown-ups, right? I'm in my mid 40s right now. How do I go back and uncover the 0 to 5 traumas which I might have had, right? Uh,
You don't have
yeah.
to. Decode You can do that for you.
Okay.
This program that I
Yes.
created, based on what you're going through
Mm.
today, where do you feel most pain today, it can just go back and tell you what you have resisted in your childhood, why you have resisted, what are your defense mechanism, coping strategies, what are your maladaptive beliefs or the negative beliefs that we are carrying inside of us. We have everything will be just there in front of you so that you can now, understanding yourself better, be more mindful in the future that how to actually use those coping strategies or defense mechanism more mindfully, not on autopilot anymore.
Okay. Interesting. So now, when people uncover, through your experience, and I believe you've been doing this framework which you, or the process which you've developed for the last 3 years now, does that have a more serious impact to them further, that it kind of all bubbles up, right? All these bad memories or these thoughts really bubble up in front of their eyes and saying, holy crap, like, I've been through a lot.
Yeah, so we have all been going through this feeling, as I said, a lot.
Hmm.
I mean, the movie, the plot is the same,
Okay.
but the movie and the characters are
Hmm.
different, right? Every time you are the hero of your own
Yeah.
movie, the stage is set, but the plot remains same. You're going to feel
Hmm.
unloved. Now, who's going to make you feel unloved? How they are going to make you feel unloved? In which circumstances you're going to feel unloved is just going to
Hmm.
change.
Very, very interesting. So when you, and correct me if I'm wrong, you've been doing coaching, or you've been a coach for almost 15 years now, and but you developed this framework.
No, it's been 10
Okay.
years.
So you've only developed this framework
Yeah,
for the last 3 years. So what prompted you to develop this framework,
yeah, yeah.
right? Like, why, what got you to
I
think,
have been, yeah. I have been this very curious person all the time, and knowing myself was the biggest
okay,
challenge. I always wanted to know, why do I do this? Why do I think in this way? Why do I feel this? Why do I like something and dislike something? Because everything that I am today, or whatever I believe that I am today, there is a reason behind
hmm,
it. And I couldn't ask anyone. No one could give me the answer. They would say, yeah, we were born like this. This is how it
hmm,
is. You like something, you dislike something. But that is not the reason behind our likes. So then we should all be
yeah,
same. Why are all of us have, like, you can like avocado, for example, and there could be someone else who hates avocado, or someone could have allergy to
yeah,
avocado, right? So this is what makes us different, is how we respond to a
hmm,
stimulus. Avocado is just an
yeah,
information, a data that my sensory organs are receiving. But how I react to that data is making me who I am. My reaction is making me the person who I am. So if I could understand what I am reacting to and change my reaction consciously from reacting rather
hmm.
responding, then I would have more control over myself.
Very, very interesting. So, can we go a little bit deeper into this framework? Like, you spoke about a holistic framework and a holistic process. Uh, I would love to hear about, what you spoke about. There are different aspects to it. Now, can we go a little bit double click on that further in terms of, and would love to hear, before we started recording, you did speak about these ailments which are there, right, which are now becoming bigger and bigger. Earlier in the yesteryears, we would hear one off cases of cancer or diabetes or heart attack, and now it's like on rampant, right? Every other person we hear, or every one person in, like, every 1 out of 6 you would hear, hey, that person has cancer, right? Which is not such a good situation to be in. So is it cure or is it preventive? So that's the first thing which I would want to know.
The cure part takes a longer time. It can
Okay.
cure, but it can take much, much longer time, because the crisis stage is the ultimate stage where the body cannot tolerate anymore,
Hmm.
right? Or the mind has given up, or the nerves are giving up. We are into high panic state. So basically, it's a state where we are completely intolerant to a stimulus,
Hmm.
and that becomes a longer period of treatment. Just like anything, when you go to a doctor, when things are really, you're in the last stage of anything, it takes much, much longer for a cure, and the cure is uncertain as well. For any kind of ailment, when you go at a later stage, it's the same thing whether you are going to a professional medicine practitioner or you come to a holistic practitioner.
Yeah.
But in holistic therapy, this model that I have created, it really helps you understand what can cause the disturbance. And by mindful application with the tools given, you can prevent that disturbance from happening in the future, whether it's physical, mental, or even behavioral. We can really stop, let's say, kids or people from going into addictive behavior,
Interesting.
compulsion, any kind of compulsive behavior.
Hmm.
Because as you understand, sure, that addiction is just a defense mechanism, isn't
Yep,
it?
it is. So,
Like I am not able to tolerate some kind of pain, so I want to protect myself from the pain
hmm,
emotion. I run away to something, is a flight mechanism where I'm running away to something else, which is a substance. It could be something else altogether. It can even be food, where people binge eat when they are in
hmm.
pain.
Yeah, I've seen that. It's happened with me, right? When and this is something which I've come to realize, which if I'm sad today, my flight response is have something sweet. Because it's not an addiction. Somebody will call it an addiction, but now I've been able to control it, right? Rather than going and having an urge, because I always have an urge that after meals I need to have some sweet, or during the day I can just put a so-called sugar-free mints in my mouth, and have that satiated feeling of, hey, I'm having something sweet, but I'm also able to get through my day. And that's something which I've been avoiding now completely, because I've come to realize, to your point, the addiction part of it, which is, but how is that addiction linked to trauma? And going back to the trauma conversation which we had.
It's simple.
Okay.
It's simple. I felt unloved in the
Hmm.
childhood. Let's say I'm talking about very particular case where my father, I believe, wanted a boy and I was
Okay.
born as a girl. So this feeling that I was not wanted, and when my brother was born later on, he was more important than I was a trauma for me, emotional trauma, feeling unloved,
Hmm.
right? Now, what can happen from this? Because if this continues and I'm not able to tolerate this, I will run away to something else. I can get into a wrong company who will make me feel accepted and
Yep.
wanted because I'm running away from home where my father doesn't want me.
Hmm. Interesting.
I can get into any kind of substance where I will forget my pain of not being wanted by my father.
Hmm.
So I'm in the flight
Right.
mode. This is called a defense mechanism because I'm not able to tolerate my pain. And that's just an emotional pain. No one is beating me up or, violently abusing me or something. It's an emotion. Because my brain cannot identify between physical and emotional, it sends the same signal to run away from the pain or to fight it as if it was a physical threat to me.
Hmm. Very, very interesting. So now, when you've started using this holistic approach to, I would use a strong word, treat people, uh, right? What are you seeing? Is there a common pattern emerging? Is there a common theme emerging, or do you see everybody is almost, because you've developed tools in this holistic approach, right? So is it very personalized, or is there a generic framework which you can leverage and
It's a generic it's a generic framework which applies for every single
hmm,
one. As I told you, we all have felt
yeah.
unloved somehow or the other, through someone or the other, in certain circumstances or the
Hmm,
other. When we felt that in the childhood, we did not have the capacity or no one taught us how to process that feeling.
hmm,
We always have been trained as a society to be happy. But when we are sad, No one teaches us how to process
Yeah.
this. And I always tell my clients, think about, just sit for a moment and think of the memories of sadness versus the memory of happiness in your life. And you will see there would be more memories of sadness than happiness. And then why are we not teaching ourselves how to process this emotion than chasing happiness all the time?
But should people, uh, I would say, recognize that, and you can't have a perfect life. And what I'm trying to get at is there will be situations of sadness everywhere, right? In our lifespan, every day, probably. Uh, should people flight it or fight it at that time and deal with it there and there, rather than take a flight and it kind of builds up? It's like a snowball effect which just keeps building up, right? Till the time you can't just take that load of that snowball. So what's your recommendation to some?
So, what is my recommendation is if we are in the fight and flight mode, whenever our expectations are not fulfilled or we are feeling unloved for whatever reason, then we are still in our animal instinct. We haven't evolved from animals till humans
Yeah.
yet. So, in order to evolve into a proper human, not the biological human, psychological human, we have to learn, train our brain to switch off the autopilot when it is not a physical threat.
Okay. Now, traumas can be physical. You spoke a lot about emotional aspect, right? There can be physical traumas also, right? Probably, I have shared this, but on this season. But let's say as a child, I was born with my feet. It's called the club foot, with my feet inside, right? And I've been operated on both my legs.
Right.
I have had two operations as a child. I almost overdosed on morphine. The doctors did, because I was not getting into sleep. Then I woke up in middle of the operation, with my legs open. I saw that I again fell back into my bed, and they had to inject more morphine. So it was almost an overdose of morphine, which led me to a coma, which was more physical than emotional. Right now,
Right, right. But the physical caused a lot of emotional trauma as well.
yes, it did. But as a child, which I was not aware of, right, and I don't remember anything to date, right? What was that emotional response? Whether I was in pain, whether my mother always often keeps telling me stories about what's gone with me during but I still have that distinct memory, me waking up in the middle of the operation where the plasters have been out with my legs all open, and I see that blood all over and I go back, right? I still have that memory. And that was
Hmm.
something I realized as I did that exercise, a 4 day intensive exercise, and still try to work through with the coach. uh, it kind of became fresh in my memory, right? Now that was more physical, and it had have may have had emotional response at that time, but right now it's more physical trauma. And there can be you've fallen down, or you've done this and that, right? You've played and you've fallen down, or you might have hurt yourself. So these physical traumas, and definitely they come back to emotional, because you may be crying, or you may be in terrible pain, and you may be cursing yourself why you did that, xyz. Which ones are harder to manage in your perspective? Is it more physical or is it emotional?
Physical traumas are always connected with emotions. You can't just separate the physical trauma from the emotions. That's the more challenging one, because now you have two things to deal with. Physical trauma is let's say, is a trauma on the body itself,
Mhm.
right? Whether you are having a surgery, which you need to have, it can be a physical trauma. Even if you are having a surgery for aesthetic
Yeah.
purposes, that's also a physical trauma. In your case, it was let's say, something that was needed to be
Yes.
done, to put your legs back together, so that you could walk properly and have a normal life. So it was a compulsion that you had to go
Yep.
through it. It's a physical only trauma, and the physical body heals, and the scars also sometimes, you can't even see the scars as you grow up. But what is left behind is your mind, your memory.
Hmm.
It's in the mind now. It's not in the body anymore.
Yes. So what prompted you to be a coach?
You know, I always had this from the childhood. My Pishi, that's my father's sister,
Okay.
she is a doctor,
Okay.
and her husband also was a doctor.
Okay.
Somehow I would have seen them growing up, their profession. I used to visit their hospital where they were both interning in those times, and I always wanted to be a doctor.
Okay.
But it didn't happen for many reasons. I fell in love very early in my life when I was 17 years old, and then kind of didn't focus too much into my studies. And more so, my mother was a working woman,
Okay.
and she never used to be around my childhood. So somehow I told myself that having a family and being there for the family was my priority than being a working mother.
Hmm.
And I never really wanted to have a career. Never.
Okay.
I just wanted to be there taking care of my child and the family. Just wanted to be not like my mother, you know. Many of us have that. I
Yeah.
don't want to be like my mother. I don't want to be like my father. So then but that guess that always stayed inside. So as my son was growing up, he was in grade 9, and I have only one
Hmm.
child. I was as I said, I was always very self observant. I was always asking questions to myself, and I could see, foresee rather, how my life is going to be when my son is going to go to the university, the empty nest, and everything. How am I going to deal with it?
Hmm.
And that's when I started to look into this side of what can I do which I like. And I had psychology in my
Okay.
undergrads in the college. So somehow I always liked to know how why people behave the way they do.
Hmm.
People's behavior is very intriguing to me. And then I delved more into learning, educating myself. And over the years, it's a constant journey of learning everything that comes into my way, taking up courses. Even today, whatever I see, new therapeutic model coming up, I sign up for that. I learn. It's a continuous journey of growing and learning and understanding the human mind and human behavior. It's so intriguing, and there's so much that I can learn from other people's
Yep.
discoveries. So that really made me understand that there is some missing element, you know, even though I'm doing so much, I'm learning so much, but I couldn't put things together. There's something missing in every modality that has been discovered or developed so far. And I have been meditating, by the way, for the last 34
Nice.
years in my personal journey. I'm a very spiritual person and very disciplined. So it really helps me to focus, and my mind is quite disciplined as well. So, in this way, I really can focus with any thought or any question and keep on digging deeper to get answers with all the knowledge that I have gathered over the years. And that helped me really to figure out, connect the dots, and put everything together. And I believe, and I really, really am very optimistic that one day Decode You can give a permanent solution to human suffering, because my whole aim is to stop people from their stories of pain.
Hmm. So, how do you pronounce this entire piece? How do you spell it out? The framework which you have?
It's DecodeYou, decode you.
DecodeYou.
It's a path to self. Yeah, it's a path to self mastery.
Why that name? It's a very interesting name, right? You've been talking about it. You've been sharing this. Why that name?
Decode you is decoding yourself.
Hmm.
This is all I preach: to know yourself, to discover yourself, become self aware, get to know what you are running away from. Do you realize that all the choices that you have made in your life, all and every choice,
Hmm.
is only based on how you can be loved?
Wow, that's a deep thought. Okay. Hmm.
And all of us, every human being on the planet, we are just seeking love. Love, I'm not talking about romantic, intimacy kind of a love.
Yep.
Love is everything. Through success, I want to be loved. Through closeness, I want to be loved. Through friendship, I want to be loved. The way I look, I wear my clothes, I dress my hair, I want to be loved. It's in everything that I do. My whole idea is that what I'm seeking. I want to be loved.
Hmm.
So each of us, we are doing this, but we are doing this without conscious awareness. If we are more conscious, more aware that we are just seeking this, then we can communicate also better and become more transparent in our quest and become honest human beings. We can get rid of all our dysfunctional behaviors where we pretend that when we don't need love, where we pretend I don't need you, I'm better than you. We can all overcome all of this when we truly understand our true quest, what it is.
Today, understanding about self-awareness, practicing mindfulness, is becoming a big thing. Uh, why do you think so? That's happening right now. It was not so prevalent early on, but it's now becoming a big issue, a concern. Mental health is becoming a big concern. Why do you think these practices, which have been there for many, many years, right? Our forefathers spoke about that. In Urdu, there is a word called kinat, right? Which is you just are happy, right? With yourself, with everything around you, and rather than trying to run behind things, you just have a kinat in life. So, why do you think that's happening right now in the world?
I, in Decode You, there's a huge part, I believe, and I teach people how to overcome ancestral trauma.
Hmm.
As much as you and I, we are seeking to be loved and we are running away from the pain of being unloved, they have also done that, right?
Yeah.
They have also run away whenever they felt unloved. They went into fight and flight modes. So, what we are carrying is a baggage that is passed on from many generations into us. So, we are basically overwhelmed and overloaded with ancestral traumas,
Hmm.
leave alone our lifetime of experiences. So now it is becoming too much for us to bear as a race, as a human race, carrying so many generations of fight and flight mode. Every one of them.
Hmm.
I had a client who came for weight loss, okay? Because what we do is during holistic treatment, we figure out the root cause of everything.
Yeah.
And as much as you do dieting, as much as you do exercises, usually whenever you stop diets or stop exercising, the weight comes back, right?
Yep.
It's because you're not treating the root cause, which is the emotional and the psychological reason behind you having a bad behavior, which could be overeating or not eating healthy or binging or whatever.
Yeah.
It is the behavior is psychological.
Hmm.
So once we correct that, then when people go ahead and do diet or exercise, it leaves more permanent long-term effect on them than just randomly doing the outer things but not taking care of the inner work.
Yeah.
So what happened is this lady, when she came, she spoke about how she has this compulsive behavior every time she goes to the supermarket. She loads her cart with food. Now there are two people at home. She doesn't need so much food. So she comes back and then she has to cook and she has to eat to finish off. Otherwise, she doesn't want to waste money. And
Yeah.
what is the outcome? She's not losing weight.
Hmm.
But when we go progress deeper into the sessions, we realize that a few generations ago, she had an ancestor who lived a war.
Oh wow. Okay.
Okay, and this will tell you her behavior is coming from 3 generations back.
Interesting. But how do you realize, people find it difficult to realize their own traumas, or the situations where they were unloved. How do you go back and find out the ancestral piece, right? I really don't know anything about my, like, as an example, I don't know anything about, I know what my grandfather did or my grandparents did, but I don't know anything about that generation or my ancestors. Anyways.
As long as you know your parents,
Yeah.
it's good enough to know what might have been passed on through them to
Hmm.
you. because they were carrying their ancestors. You don't have to know them.
Okay. And let's say, so, meaning I'm going a little bit off topic and going a little bit deeper into this. Somebody who doesn't know their parents. So how do you uncover that?
Whatever trauma was caused is usually by the authority figure who we lived with.
Okay, interesting.
The authority figure, whenever. So listen, Anis, just think you have kids,
Yeah.
right? Between the age group of 0 to 5, every child's need for love, care, attention is 24/7.
Hmm.
And they do not know how to deal with delayed gratification.
Yeah.
For them, it's instant gratification or nothing. How much a mindful, attentive parent you might have been, as an adult, we all know we have so much responsibility and so many things to take care of that we would not be available to our child 24/7.
Yes.
But each time that their need for love, care, and attention had been delayed or denied, it has caused them emotional trauma.
Hmm.
Each and every one of us have been through this in our childhood. You would not remember this, none of us would do.
Yeah.
But today we can see what we have resistance to. Let's say someone, whenever in a group, a friend doesn't include me in their games,
Yep.
you will see your child, right?
Yes.
And what he will come back home and complain, oh, this is what happened in school. That means they are resisting that. They are developing resistance towards it.
Hmm.
Resistance is a behavior which is a defensive behavior, protective behavior. Why do I need to protect myself if it was not a trauma in the past that there has been similar memory where I was not included, let's say, and that exclusion or rejection has caused a trauma memory. I have forgotten, but the subconscious has encoded that memory for my survival.
Hmm.
Whenever in the future I will have similar exclusive, like exclusion from any group, anyone would do that, it will just trigger that memory. It's not today's event that is causing the pain. It's the trigger of the old memory that's causing the pain. And I'm treating this new event with the same behavior that I learned in the past, to resist it, to run away from it, or to fight it.
Interesting. Now, the reason why I asked this question and I asked about somebody who not having a parent is because in my mind, I'll be very candid. It was going okay. Our DNAs, right, carry the the things which have happened, right. It's almost like a, a chip, a
Yeah, you're
software
right.
has been given passed
It's
on.
a memory bank.
Yes, it has been
It's
getting,
a memory
yeah,
bank,
it's
let's say.
getting
Yeah.
passed on to our
Yeah.
generations over generations, right? So I was thinking in that direction, right?
Right. Right.
So
Yeah. Yeah. You're absolutely right.
yeah.
So what will happen is, let's say, uh, let's go back a few 10,000, 20,000 years ago.
Hmm.
You will see our roots are the same, right?
Yes.
Ultimately,
Yes.
we will see that your ancestor, my ancestor, whose ever ancestor were the
Yeah.
same. So, whatever you are carrying in your body, in your gene, the memory, and I might also have the same genetic memory in my body.
Yes.
But the expression of the gene will only happen based on my
Experience.
unique experience today and the perception of the experience
Hmm.
that will express the gene or it will keep it dormant.
Hmm. Interesting. Yeah, because
So if you don't have that similar experience, you will not, that gene will not get expressed, you will not have the disease, even if your grandparents or father or mother might have had it.
hmm. No, this is interesting, right? Because I've been trying to learn a little bit more about DNA and how DNA is, right? So DNA is not just about our biological aspect, but also the psychological aspect. It carries that, like you said, memory banks, right? It carries that software which we've been programmed or our brains have carrying that for a
Yeah.
long generations, right? So that's an interesting aspect. But switching this a little bit differently, right? Can you share some? You do not name the clients. I very well appreciate the anonymity in that, but if you can share one or two examples of success, right? Like the person has completely transformed XYZ. Uh, would love to hear that, right? It may be inspirational for others to see the power of this holistic process and the treatment which you're talking about.
I've had variety of clients. I have had clients who have like medically recovered from cancer,
Oh wow.
but they have some kind of holistic. No, they have not recovered from holistic therapy.
Okay.
They have gone through chemo and they are cancer free at this moment. But they have this awareness that there could be something deeper which can later on get triggered again, and they might go through a relapse.
Hmm.
So they would typically come for therapy with me to understand what could be that embedded reason that caused the disease, and then working with it can prevent the relapse later on. Because most of the cancer free patients usually, I mean, not everyone, but there are chances of relapse later
Yeah.
on. It comes back in some form of the or the other,
Yeah.
right? So we can prevent relapses very well, which is one of the stories that I can share. That someone who had very in her very early life, she was diagnosed with colon cancer
Hmm.
while she was going through her. It was even before her marriage. She was very young. I think she was in her 25, 26 years old at that time, and she would come to me for therapy, at the same time go for chemo, so that she could prepare her body and the mind to be more receptive to the chemo
Hmm.
and would have less adverse reactions to the chemotherapy. She went through all her chemos successfully without any adversity, without any side effect. She, in the next few years, she got married. She has a beautiful baby girl now.
Nice.
She's very healthy, and life is normal, a normal life she's leading as a mother of a child. And I, when I see her, I talk to her, I feel like so blessed, to be a part of this journey. There has been, like a client of mine would just, I'm talking about these people only because they have kind of awareness already. People who are not aware, they would not come to us for these reasons, right? But this client came to me asking, Sharmishta, I have been trying different businesses all the time, and every time I try something, I end up closing it up because I see some kind of success, and then as if everything goes away from my hand. And this time also, I have noticed some pattern, she said. Can you explain to me what is
Hmm.
going on? So, whenever I see success in my business, someone at home falls sick. And then I kind of think it's because of the success that I'm having that my father is sick, or my brother falls sick, or my mother falls sick. Something is wrong. Can you explain? So while during the therapy, we understood, she also told me that 2 generations back, her grandfather was like a billionaire. They had so much money in the family, and then within the same generation, they lost all the money.
Wow.
So when I heard this, it clicked like a light bulb for me. And I asked her the how did the grandfather acquire the money, and we came to know that it was not in the very honest ways that they had acquired the money. And when every time someone in the family would fall sick because of the guilt from making money that they had inside, they would assume that it's God's way of punishing
Hmm.
them. So now they got rid of the money one at a time, slowly, every property, everything that they have, and hoping and believing that this is the only way to save the family by getting rid of the money which was not acquired honestly.
Wow.
So there is a belief in the family, the belief in the mind of those people that money When you have money, someone will fall sick.
Okay.
And this has been passed on for few generations, the third generation I'm talking about,
Okay.
where she, being the third generation child, is also feeling, even though she hasn't heard this, she hasn't seen the old money, but she is seeing a pattern where someone is falling sick whenever she is seeing some success.
Wow.
So these all the beliefs that we have, all the conditions are actually self-preservatory conditions, right? To save ourselves, to save the family. We have created a belief that this is the only way my family will survive, or I will survive if I don't have
Hmm.
money. Now, how do you think, if this is a belief? Beliefs, we say in general that we attract realities based on our
Yep.
beliefs. But how do we do that? The beliefs directly don't create a reality. Because of the belief that is there in the subconscious, we will make wrong choices, or choices that will lead to the consequence of the
Hmm.
belief. It's like a future predictive belief. So something your mind has already predicted, and all your choices will lead you to that future. Once we identify the belief, we can overcome it, overwrite
Hmm.
it. We just have to train the mind again to come back to the present, which is now still as if preparing or preventing a crisis which had happened 3 generations back.
Hmm.
And it can be resolved. So she has success, or she has seen success, and the sickness is not now connected to her successes anymore.
That's interesting. You know, this is a very interesting perspective which you've shared, right? But I just want to kind of take a step back and ask a very different question. And I ask often people who are coaches, right? Should a coach have a coach? Do you have a coach?
Absolutely. I always tell people, it's does a surgeon can cut, he can cut himself
Yeah.
open, can
No, he
he?
can't.
He
He
can
or she can't.
diagnose if he has a gallbladder issue. Yeah, he can say, oh, I have a colon issue or I have this issue. He can very well diagnose the problem,
Yeah.
but he will still need another surgeon to cut him open.
Okay. Interesting.
So I always go to other therapists to cut me open, even though I can tell them that this is the
Hmm.
problem. I can see it, but I can't cut myself
Yeah.
open.
So building on this, is there, and I was talking to somebody else the other day, and they gave a reference of an athlete. Like today, if you look at any sports, you don't have one type of a coach. You have a psychologist, you have a nutrition, you have a physical coach, you have a game coach. You have different types of coaches, right, for an athlete. Similarly, for a working professional or an individual who's not even working, do you require one coach who can do everything, or do you require different types of coaches in your life? And is it that, which is a follow up on that, is it you keep up with one coach for the rest of your life, or do you keep changing coaches?
It really depends. First of all, I do not call myself a coach at
Okay.
all. I am more of a counselor.
Okay.
So I counsel people, I guide them, but it is not me who makes things happen for
Hmm.
them. It is they who make it happen by just mindfully applying the learning and carrying it into their life. If they do not, if they don't apply, there is no application, nothing shifts, nothing
Great.
changes. They still remain, even with all the awareness and the knowledge that they have gained, they will still remain in the same
Hmm.
place. So, mindfulness is the next step. After self
Yeah.
awareness, the next step is mindful application. So, if there is no mindful application, then self awareness is
Hmm.
useless. So now, as you said, that what do you need? Do you like mental health and physical health are two aspects of our life.
So talking about this research, right, and this is also a challenge today in the industry, and goes back to the offhand conversation, the back conversation you and I were having, is the holistic approach to life, right? Whether it is from health, mind, spirituality. Today, lot many people don't believe in it, or they want to believe in it but they don't have the means and the resources to be part of it. And we know very well the larger institutions, whether it's the insurance coverage or whether it's those aspects, don't cover any of that. And there is a resistance to it because people cannot afford it, people cannot pay it, or don't want to pay it from their pocket. You know, I'm sure you're seeing that as well within your practice today, right?
Yeah, people also don't want to pay it because they don't see immediate result. If they go to a doctor and take
Yeah,
medicine for whatever, like let's say you have a sleep
yeah,
disorder, you take medicine for sleep, you will be able to immediately go off to sleep. Even though after 3 months that medicine wouldn't work for
yes,
you, you would need a higher
yeah,
dose. But that doesn't matter for them, right? But while you're going through holistic therapy, and I can, like, I have treated people from sleeping disorder, but it takes 3 to 4
yeah,
months. It's a gradual process to reverse all the chemicals in the body, to reverse the cycles and the patterns and the habits. It takes time, and people don't have the patience. It's like instant gratification. I want it now. In one session, I want to heal, I want to cure everything that I have been going
yeah,
through for years of my
yeah.
life, which is really frustrating and challenging for
Is this
us.
instant gratification has become such a rage right now these days, right? This attentions, our attentions have dropped,
So we, yeah.
right? We earlier, we would be okay to, watch in India specifically Doordarshan, which would have a 4 minute ad and all of that, right? Today, we don't like it. We would like skip it or fast forward it, right? You would see that in Dubai as well. All with digital TV, you can just forward it. You can get ahead of the ad, right? Or you can record it. So that instant gratification has become such a big piece because our attentions have reduced a lot, right? Today it's like people talk our attention span is 3 seconds, five
Isn't
seconds.
it because of the multiple options?
Yes,
Numerous
yes,
options.
it's
It's because of that,
uh,
right? So you don't want to focus in one because there are 10 other waiting for
yeah.
you. In our like young days, I'm 52 years old today. In my younger days, how many options? I think I have. TV came into my house when I was maybe in my teens.
Hmm.
Yeah, there was no option.
Yes,
So, how many channels could we
I
watch?
agree.
So, the lesser the option, the more our attention on that because we have nothing else to do.
So there is a process of elimination also, right? As part of this holistic work, which you would typically do is
Hmm.
because, I've often heard before you add, you should subtract, right? Right.
Yes.
So there is a process of elimination also as part of the holistic approach which you would take with your I would not call them patients, but with people who come to you.
Addition and subtraction, depending on people's lifestyle
Yeah.
completely, right? So if you are, let's say, in a very high position in your company, you would want to have access to every
Yes.
information that's
Yes.
available. Right? You don't want to eliminate anything because you don't want to fall
Yeah.
out. The same thing for kids today. They don't want to become. They want to be included in everything. They don't want to fall out. They want to be not be the
Yeah.
bystander. So this is what we are in an age where there is as much as information is out there. There is so much of crap out there too,
Yep.
right? So, how to differentiate between the right information and just what's put up by people, which is not
Yep.
legit? How to differentiate? How to eliminate? It's not possible, I guess. We have to take in all and then sit with it and realize what works for you and what doesn't work for
Yep.
you. And when people tell me, oh, what you say, is that right or is this wrong? I always say this, that there is nothing wrong and nothing right. Whatever works is right and whatever doesn't work is
Hmm.
wrong.
No, on that note, Shashmita, this has been an amazing conversation. I know you're busy, your busy schedule, and you are also going through your own
I know it's
process.
morning, you have to go and cook
No,
now. So let's call it a day,
yeah,
and definitely we will talk about it another
yeah.
time. And Sunday, you have plans to go out and enjoy your day?
Definitely, and I'm sure you will have a restful night in Dubai. So thank you for taking time out.
Yeah, It's 9 o'clock
Yeah.
now.
So thank you for taking time out. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you on the show today.
It's amazing to speak to you, and we connected on several levels
Yep.
and loved talking to you, Anis.
Likewise.
All the best.
Likewise.